Whatever I had tried to knock me down. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. I don't know why every time I start recording I get nervous, but I am nervous. But I think I'm also jittery because I had coffee, so that could be it too. Anyways, this is the long-awaited video, pretty much giving you guys inside look into how I got out here, pretty much the steps I took to get prepared to be out here, and then the flight, how I adjusted to being out here pretty much. Yeah, this entire thing, I can honestly tell you it was not stress-free. Let's just go ahead and get into it. The things that I needed in order for me to come to Bali. Off rip, of course, I needed my passport. That's like a given. You have to have at least 6 months worth of, I guess it's before your passport expires. That's how much you need at least in order for you to come here, according to my research. One thing I will note before continuing, their regulations definitely changed a lot during the time that I was trying to plan to come out here, so it might be a slight difference in it now, whether it means that you now need less or that you may need more. Most of the things that I needed to bring as far as paperwork, I have the physical copy, I printed it out, and then I also have the file or the picture on my phone as well. So the passport, I have my physical passport, I printed out a picture of it, and then I have the picture on my phone. Also, I needed to bring a visa. That's not mandatory for people who are trying to come out here as a vacation, like for less than a month. In that case, you can do visa on arrival, where you come here and then you apply for a visa, you get a quick one. As for me, I had to bring a visa because I planned on being out here for longer. So I applied online for the B21AA visa, which is, I believe, the business visa. And I got approved. It wasn't nothing crazy. I think it was about like $250 or something of the sort. I could be wrong. It was probably around that ballpark though. I went to the Bali website, which is bali.com, and then they sent me an invoice where I needed to do a bank transfer because I couldn't for some reason do it as like an online transaction. I had to go to my bank and have the funds transferred to their bank. After I was approved, they sent me the PDF through the email, and the PDF held both an English and a Balinese language version, so I printed both out. So that's that. It only took 2 weeks for me to get my visa, by the way, so that was good. Also, I needed my vaccination, which I actually already had both my vaccinations, because you know you have to have like 2 to be fully vaccinated. But after doing research, some of the people that I was looking at on like YouTube and things like that, they were starting to announce that you might need like a booster shot or something like that. It was very foggy, so I would say about 2 weeks before I boarded my flight, I definitely got a booster shot just because I didn't want for anything to hold me up, which now I know that wasn't necessarily needed because I haven't been asked about a booster shot at all. I also went and got my PCR test done. That as well, I did not need it all. It was cool to have it just in case, but nobody asked me at any airport for my COVID test results, which was surprising to me. Also, I got travel insurance through Safety Wing. They didn't ask me for that either. Like I said, was doing research and I was just trying to figure out what all I needed. Some people were saying to get travel insurance, which, I mean, it's a good thing to get regardless of if they are requiring for you to have it or not, because you never know what's going to happen. So safetywing.com, it was very easy, but like I said, nobody required it. I was never asked if I had travel insurance throughout my flights and boarding and all of that. So I also needed this specific app. I'll put the name of it on the screen because I don't know how to pronounce it. What is it? Peduli Lidungi? I don't know. Sorry. And then you just put like your vaccine info, pretty much your COVID records, all of that on the app. I want to say it's a way to verify that you have your documents and things like that, but I just downloaded the app, put in my info and all that, and then when I got to the airport, the last airport that I was at, they required for me to have it. So it was cool that I had already downloaded the app, which if you do plan on coming out here, if you don't download it, they'll have you download it at the airport. So, but if you don't want to be held up, you might as well just download it before you even start boarding your flight. I had to fill out some acknowledgement forms, which if I hadn't have done it online, I would have been able to do it at the last airport, the Bali airport. It's just some forms acknowledging like I'm not gonna be smuggling anything, or I haven't smuggled anything, and I have my vaccination records and all that stuff. Pretty much just like verification forms. You're signing that you are not on some BS. It was very simple to do online. I had a barcode that it provided after I finished where I was able to cut through the line and they scanned my barcode and I was able to officially like get to customs, I believe is where I went to next. Also, I booked my first place while I was still in the US. I booked it for 1 week just so that I can get comfortable. And I also booked my driver, which was provided by the place that I booked because they had a driver available. They just picked me up from the airport and then took me to my first stay. And this was all on Airbnb.com. Out of this entire process, the hardest part was not so much getting prepared. It was that despite me checking things, doing my research, making sure that I had all my paperwork, it just never felt like I was fully prepared. And I don't know how many people can relate to that, but I like to be prepared before I make steps, no matter how big or how small. And because the regulations kept changing, I was getting different information from random people. I'd never been out here before. It just never felt like I was prepared enough. So I would say the last week before boarding my first flight, I was stressed. I tried my best not to be stressed, but I just found myself waking up early in the morning with anxiety. I found myself on autopilot a lot where I was not present anywhere. I was always in my head like, make sure you do this. It wasn't even fully that I was trying to prepare for coming out here. I was also preparing to leave. So if you could understand, getting my dog together, getting my car, making sure all my payments were taken care of for all my bills at home, and all of these things. I was like in my head a lot, just trying to make sure I was dotting my I's, crossing my T's, leaving family, saying goodbye, making sure I contacted people, just all of that. So it was a stressful week, I can't lie. And then also, obviously, the whole packing situation, making sure I brought everything that I needed, and then also trying to have the confidence that I had everything I would need, and whatever I forgot, I would just be able to get out here, which I'll probably do a packing video, like what I packed in the future, but I mean, it's gonna be too long for me to throw that in here, so maybe in the future. So those were all of the things that I needed to get out here. Now we're going to get into the flights, which, by the way, a part of me making sure that I had everything paperwork wise, I obviously had to book my flights. So I booked all of my flights on the Hopper app, which it's not sponsored. On the Hopper app, you can go through the list of flights that are available and they try to find the best prices for you. And so my goal was not to get a super cheap flight because I knew it was going to be long. It was 3 separate flights, and they were very long. It took me almost 2 days just to get out here. So I knew I didn't want to have no cramped flight, but I didn't want to spend a ton of money. I went to the luxury portion of what they were showing as far as what was available. I just decided to look through it, and to my surprise, there were affordable flights for first class or business class flights all the way through in order for me to get out here. So I snagged them up, and for my first time ever, I flew first class. It was a great experience. I cannot lie. I was so excited. So my first flight was with American Airlines. I flew from Detroit to Philly. It was about a 2-hour flight, give or take a couple minutes. Then my second flight was from Philly to Qatar, I don't know how to pronounce it, sorry. That was about, almost 12 hours, 13 hours. That was my longest flight. And then my third flight was from Qatar to Bali, and that was about 10 hours. The last 2 were through Qatar Airways. Sorry, I'll put the names on the screen. I never check in bags, by the way. So my goal was to bring only a carry-on and a personal, and that is what I did. I did bring a 21-inch carry-on and then a personal to sit on top and all of that stuff. And when I got there, my intentions were, like I said, to not check things in, but what I did not know was that American Airlines, they have very, very small cubby spaces at the top. And so my carry-on actually could not fit on there. So they checked my bag anyway. And that was a whole debacle in itself because I was afraid that I would lose my bags, and I also never check in bags, so I don't have as much experience in that area. And long story short, I didn't know where my bags went for a short period of time. Like, I knew they checked it, but I thought that I would pick them back up after my flight. My first flight, but it turns out that they flew it all the way to Bali, so I never had to pick it up. But I didn't know that, so don't come for me in the comments if that's something that just regularly happens, because I truly had no idea. I am a carry-on girl, okay? But so they checked my bags in. Now, the first flight was first class, and I would honestly say it didn't feel much different than economy. I did have more leg room, but the real difference was that I was sitting in the front versus the back. Now, I understand different airplanes have different layouts and different versions of first class, but the only real difference to me was that I had more leg space, like I said, and then they gave me a glass of water, and then they gave me like warmed up Fig Newtons. It wasn't nothing spectacular, but it was pretty cool. I mean, you know, to have the leg space, that was my favorite part of it. But other than that, I mean, nothing was different. I got off that flight. I think it was like a 2 hour, not even a 2 hour layover. Then I got on the big flight. Now, this flight through Qatar Airways, this was different. In person, it just looks a lot bigger, a lot more fancy. So on this flight, you had the chair that went all the way back where you can lay 180 degrees. So you're pretty much in a bed at this point if you lay it all the way back. They give you a blanket, they give you PJs, they give you slippers, hygiene kit where you have lotion, lip balm, perfume, little chocolate candies, which by the way, this flight I did have a whole private suite and a door that could close as well. They had a TV and the remote looked like a PSP, but it was so cool because of course they had the movies and they had games on there as well. I had a whole table that, I mean, I put all my stuff on there. It was a little junky, to be honest. But I had a separate cubby to put all of my items in for storage, which I did use later. Other than that, of course, I had the free bottle of water that was in the storage unit. They had 2 separate menus. One was for the food, and then the other was for the drinks. I didn't end up ordering any alcohol just because, I mean, sometimes when you're on a flight, I don't know if it's just me, but when you're on a flight, sometimes it can mess with your stomach, and I didn't want anything bubbly because that was just I was fine with just the food, and I ordered lamb my first meal because they had some crazy stuff on there. They had like lamb and shrimp, all these different types of meals. So I ordered lamb, and I don't know what I expected. It's still airline food, you know, so it wasn't like tens across the board, but it was decent. I went a little ahead of myself though. I would give it about like a 7 out of 10. It was okay. It was the experience that I enjoyed more than the taste of the food. But it was so pretty looking, and I did a little journaling, then I fell asleep. I mean, the time went by so quick. Everybody was super sweet. It was super comfortable, and I could order repeatedly throughout the flight. So I ended up having dinner and then breakfast, which breakfast I ordered shrimp and grits and a strawberry banana smoothie, I think. And it was pretty good. I would rate that probably an 8 out of 10 versus the lamb. It was definitely an experience. I probably won't get business class again for a minute just because I don't know how I got them flights before, but the flights now are expensive, okay? Then after that flight, I did a 8.5, almost 9-hour layover in the Qatar airport. The airport was super nice. I loved that airport. It was just so clean, and the ambiance was just, I don't know, it was a nice airport. But because I had the business class flight, I had access to the lounge, and so that was separated from the rest of the airport. And in the lounge, you had quiet seating, you had showers, you had a restaurant. I didn't go to the restaurant part just because I actually wasn't hungry none of them hours. I'm surprised actually, but I wasn't hungry, so I didn't eat. I did take a shower just because, I mean, I had been sleeping and it was almost 20 hours consecutively, so I did end up taking a shower. The showers were beautiful, and I'm so used to taken showers in public places since, being a truck driver. So this was definitely a step up from the truck stops. And before I knew it, my next flight came up. This flight was a tad bit different, but it was the same class. I still had technically a private space, but it was a little more shared because there was somebody sitting right next to me. But everything was pretty much the same. I still had 2 menus. I still had all the other amenities. I could still lay down 180 degrees, but it wasn't as big as the longer flight. Nevertheless, I enjoyed myself. 10 out of 10. The food was pretty good. The time flew because I was able to lay down, take a nap, go to sleep, all of that. So when it came to the airports, everybody pretty much wanted the same information. They wanted my visa, they wanted my vaccination records, and they wanted my tickets for the flight, my boarding passes. Nobody wanted my COVID results, like I said. Nobody wanted really anything else. The last airport, once I touched down in Bali, however, they did want my acknowledgement forms. A couple of people where I was researching prior to coming out there, they were saying that you need to have a return flight ready before you come out there because they're going to request to see your confirmation code for that. They didn't ask me anything about my return flight or anything like that, so it all worked out in that area too. Now, after all of that, which I would say pretty much my entire experience up until getting to Bali was almost 100% smooth sailing. Once I got out here, I had to adjust in ways that I did not expect. So like I sort of stated in a previous video, the first thing that caught my attention immediately that I knew of, but you don't really know until you come out here, is the time difference. Obviously, we're 12 hours ahead from Eastern time, which is where I resided prior to coming out here. The time difference definitely had me in a sense of insomnia for a split second, and then after that, it was a period of longing where I wanted to stay up around the time my family and my friends were up, just because it felt like I was alone, not being able to contact them throughout the day. That was something I didn't anticipate hitting me as hard as it did. I'm over it now. Like, I really don't, it's not affecting me anymore, but it took me some time. I would say it took me almost my entire first month to get used to that. Now, what hit me hard that I definitely didn't expect, my immune system. I don't think too many people talk about this. And it could have just been a me thing because everybody's body is different. But once I got off that flight and I came out here, I would say after the first day, I don't know if I caught something. I didn't have COVID, by the way. But whatever I caught, it took me almost a week and a half for me to get rid of it. It was like my sinuses were acting up. I was fatigued. It felt like a slight fever here and there. My throat was sore. It felt like pretty much a cold, but the cold wouldn't go away. Prior to me coming out here, I hadn't had a cold in years. Like, I'm talking about 5-6 years. And even if I had something that felt like it could be a cold, it would be gone within 24 hours because either I did something about it, like drank some tea or something, or it would just go away because, I mean, I'm pretty much good when it comes to colds. But I came out here, child. No, whatever I had tried to knock me down. I spent so much of that time trying to break the cold or whatever I had in so many different ways. I was putting out so many remedies. I sat in the sun for hours. I'm talking about like 5-6 hours. I drank hot tea. I did have some Dayquil, NyQuil, even though those are really just for symptoms. But I took those and it barely touched whatever I had. Like, it was barely working. My mom packed me some black seed because she's like a holistic nurse at home. Okay, so she ground me up some black seed. You can look up the benefits, but I'll leave a couple on the screen. It's so funny because she packed it for me and I had never heard of it before, and something told me to look it up once I got out here. And child, I read what it said on the website, and it's talking about how it could cure everything except death. I don't know why that cracked me up, but it's just so funny because my mama, she is so funny. I know that she was like, oh, Nisha need that. But I went ahead, packed that, so I had that with me. And once I noticed that my cold wasn't going away, I started to take that. Now, I can't lie to y'all, when it came to my throat being sore, that black seed, 30 minutes, it felt like somebody rubbed Vaseline on my throat. It felt so soothing. I don't know how else to put it. So that black seed definitely did something, okay? But even with that, what else did I have? I had charcoal tablets and things like that. I was taking stuff and I was trying to drink plenty of fluids, and I was drinking spicy, brothy soup. No matter what, it still took over a week. And I mean, one day it would get better, and then if I slowed up on whatever I was doing to try to remedy it, then the next day I would be right back at 0. Or not 0. I would say I went back to like a 6 out of 10 as far as how good I felt. And, you know, being out there, I wasn't trying to get to a point where I felt too sick to get out of bed. So I kept trying to remedy it, you know, repeatedly. And that just went on for like a week and a half. So I'll let you know if you come out here. I'm not going to say it's going to happen to everybody, but be prepared, because I almost didn't bring any cold medicine just because in my mind, I'm like, I don't get colds. So, but my daddy was like, bring you some Dayquil, some NyQuil. And I reluctantly did. So it all worked out in the end. Both my parents had my back, okay? Because I did not plan on bringing anything that was going to remedy a cold. But I'm so glad that I did. Also, one thing that I'm still currently dealing with, which I can probably attribute it to the weather. Prior to coming out here, I had very dry skin. Once I came out here, my skin went from dry to somewhat oily. Like by the end of the day, my skin will look visibly oily. And I've never had that before. Like never. It don't matter if I wore makeup or not. But once I came out here, for some reason, after a full day, by the end of it, my skin would be oily. And, you know, talking to a few people, they're like, that's actually a good thing. So I'm like, okay, fine, whatever. And then also, sorry to the people that don't want to hear this, but also my period came a whole week early, which I've never had abnormal periods. I've always had a very normal period. And once I came out here, I guess my body was just like trying to reconfigure itself, or maybe it was the stress or whatever, but period came a whole week early. Did not expect that at all. I was so confused. And then also a little bit of constipation too. And I think that's just the food change and all of that. But outside of that, I have not had any terrible side effects to anything. Which leads me into the other thing that I had to adjust to, which is the plumbing and the overall water quality of being out here. If you're unfamiliar, you can't drink the tap water because bacteria and things like that, they don't have the same type of systems that we have in the US. So that was something I was not nervous about, but very cautious about coming out here. So I don't necessarily brush my teeth in the tap water. I do use bottled water just because you never really know, you know, you can mess around, swallow something on accident. And so I just don't want to be sick, because I've heard stories of people who were like super feverish and sick and literally laid out on the bed sweating and having to pass this infection pretty much that they've acquired from coming out here and making a mistake in drinking some water. Yeah, I do not want to be on that side of things. And then also when it comes to plumbing, you can't necessarily put like tissue and stuff in the toilets because they, again, don't have the same plumbing system. You can clog it up and cause issues. So that's another thing that I had to get used to. Another thing that I did not hear about, but I ended up having to adjust to, was crossing the street. Child, listen, I don't know why people don't be talking about this, but obviously things are literally opposite on the streets out here. Instead of driving on the right side, like in the US, you're driving on the left side. That I could grasp, but for some reason, crossing the street is a little bit different. I don't know why it's disorienting to be on one side of the street and try to look both ways, and it feels like you can't mentally grasp when you should step onto the street. But for me, it just felt like one of the most daunting tasks. As of now, I still struggle to cross the street. I have to literally break it down where I have to stop halfway in the middle of the street because I have to focus on one side at a time. I can't do both. Number one is really populated on the street. Like there's a lot of traffic going on. It don't matter how many times I look both ways, it's always gonna be somebody coming. So I'll go halfway through the street, stand in the middle of the street, which by the way, they're used to people just being in the street, so it's not like they upset at me doing this. But then I stop halfway in the street and now I'm able to focus on the other side going whichever way, and then I'm able to officially cross the street. And if I don't do this, I'm gonna get hit. It's too much for my brain. I don't know why it is, but it just is. I can still do it. I just have to be careful. So, and then the other honorable mentions is obviously the food difference, and then the critters like the geckos and the beetles, and then the more touristy spots where services are offered, which I did pretty much mention in its fullness in the previous video. So if you wanted to get more info on that, check out my last video. But with that being said, I am going to end it off here. I love you all so much, and I thank you for your support, and the next video will probably be a vlog. I will see you in the next video. Bye.